Um, and and we were having conversations with businesses, especially small and medium enterprises, and their survival during that time. And we learned a lot that around why they were struggling. Part of it, of course, was the fact that the business has become slow, but crisis has a way of bringing up things that were not visible before. There were businesses that, when it was, everything was working, they were doing very well. They forgot to consider how their foundation was like. And when the crisis hit, then the foundation was really shaken, and then you're forced to go back to basics. And so this conversation is around then, was actually born around that time. And we started asking ourselves, with the teams I work with, around what makes businesses grow beyond borders and beyond generations. Let me give you a scenario. In the developing countries, in Europe especially, you'll find that businesses that are operating in those countries have been there for hundreds of years, some of them. And it's actually not surprising to find those kind of businesses. There are majority of them. In Germany, for example, you find that majority of the businesses out of the companies that you have had in Germany, I know the SAPs, the Mercedes, and the Siemens and the Bosch, all those companies are the big ones that we know. But 99% of their businesses there are actually small and medium enterprises. Out of that, 80% of those businesses have 0 to 9 employees. So think about it. Those are actually the businesses we run. Those are the ones that we sometimes call mama mboga. But those businesses contribute 50% of the GDP in that country. Okay. Out of that, and the total number of those businesses is about 3.2 million in the whole country, contributing 50%, and 80% of those 3.2 are between 0 to 9 employees. So come to Africa, and and East Africa specifically, because that's where we operate a lot. You find that when you talk of SMEs, we think about the businesses that are there for about 3 to 5 years. And this was what we saw last year. A lot of the businesses couldn't survive uh, the period of slow businesses, lockdowns. There were businesses that were so focused on, and it's not wrong. It's just that now it has forced us to rethink. Those of us who do consulting there, it has forced us to rethink then even the conversations about, um, when you go back to the basics, what does that actually mean? So then the question, even let's look at the some of the businesses that we have had lately in Kenya that have gone down. There are businesses that we all thought, when they were operating, that would survive a few generations before somebody is thinking. And in fact, when a business goes up past a certain generation, it should be passed on to that next generation, and the next generation continues to grow it. But what we have seen in the last few years, if you think about the family businesses that we've heard about, um, and some of the businesses that have grown from small businesses in Kenya, you find that some of them got to a point, and the next generation was not ready to take those businesses up. Okay, the next generation either did not manage to keep up the kind of performance that those businesses were having. So then the question, so that we came up with the question of, so what does it take then to build that business? The businesses that we have today, the businesses that we are interacting with, what does it take to build them beyond borders? The last few months, we've been involved in talking to about 100 small and medium enterprises, and the conversations have been around areas in their businesses that they need to think about improving and growing. And 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 what I'm learning just listening to those businesses, that most businesses actually want to grow. They want to go beyond these borders, and they want to be sustainable. But somehow, the more you get deeper into those businesses, the more you learn that there is so much more to learn and grow. So, so in today's session, I'll just cover a few things, a few thoughts that were actually triggered by a business that we were working with that asked us. So how do we keep innovating so that the business can go beyond the level that they are at today? Because when you think about those businesses that have gone down, not just around here but around the world, that get to a point and they no longer they're no longer innovative. They're no longer changing the way they work. Think about your Kodak, your Nokia, those businesses that came and somehow they couldn't keep up with the changes in the environment they were working with, they were working in. Then when you think about those businesses, it's because they stopped thinking about the next thing, the next change that they need to respond to in the market. And so so the kind of things that I want to talk about today is now related to that. A question I was asked: so how do we keep the employees when your businesses grow, when they come, they are no longer small, they become medium enterprises, when you're talking about over 10 employees and above, and what do you need to keep up doing so that it doesn't stop there? There's an interesting business book called The Good to Great, and that book has detailed a few things that could be important in our thoughts around building businesses. They build a sort of um, a journey that businesses take. So there's a takeoff. There's a point when most businesses will take off, but then there's a decline stage that comes, and there are certain elements of a business that impact that decline. So the question then is, how do we ensure that we grow beyond that takeoff, that we just don't take off and then decline at the same after a while, but we continue taking off and building ourselves beyond that point. So let me start with my next slide, just reflecting that even as I spoke about businesses in Europe that have gone beyond borders, I thought about how do we have those examples in Africa as well? And I have a few examples here, some of which you must be familiar with because we are probably serving, we probably have them in our homes. There's Remgro in South Africa, built in 1940. You might have heard the founder, very. Then you have Pick and Pay, Raymond Ackerman. Pick and Pay is a chain of stores that is in South Africa. Dantanta is in Nigeria in 1910. So basically, they're doing almost 100 years now. If actually it's over 100 years. Um, and then you have Ramco Group, which is here in Kenya in the early 1940s. So we are doing about over 60 years, almost 70, 71 thereabout. Then METL Group in Tanzania doing about 50 years right now, and Bidco doing for 50 years as well. So think about these companies and we ask ourselves, what actually made them grow beyond this? Because when you think about Bidco, if you look at the person, the founder, is actually the another generation that's actually running this. And I've just observed, have had conversations around how these companies have moved is around the people, the next generation that comes, start thinking about the generational issues, the issues that are being faced within that generation. So the things that started the business, some of them have changed significantly. But then there are the values that some of these businesses have maintained across all those generations. And so as I thought about this, and I did this intentionally because the notion has been that, in Africa, we can't build big businesses that go beyond borders and generations. I worked for a company once that was really trying hard to become a global company. And what I thought is, when I listened, every time I listened to the leaders of that business talking, I admired the dream of becoming a global company that was started in Africa, because that's something we need to keep talking about. We need to clap and encourage those businesses that are actually thinking global while they have started here. Why? Because everything else that we buy has been built in another country and then brought to here. So it's something that we need to encourage in our conversations, something that we need to build. And as I've talked to SMEs in Kenya and in the region, I have tried to make sure that uh, my conversations are focused on building a solid foundation. That as I look at these businesses, they had a solid foundation. Just think about and the issues that the businesses that never made it to this level. And I'm not saying that a business that is 10 years old is not doing well. Actually, we have it. And between once a business is passes 3 to 5 years, then you have really here you have taken a corner, and there's hope for that business. But there's always that challenge of getting to those 5 years, those 10 years. There's always that challenge, and that's what I want us to focus on, about where did this business start, what did they sustain, because the sustenance of their practices is what has brought that could have brought them to where they are. So allow me to go through that in about 20 minutes, and then I'll allow 10 minutes of questions and maybe discussion that we can go through. So let me give you the highlight. So I'll talk about, the first thing I'll talk about is entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. Don't log off yet. I know this is a very common topic that is spoken about, but I want us to think about it differently today in terms of when you start a business, as an entrepreneur, there are certain things that actually get you to a place where you move from a kiosk, so to speak, a small business, and to a company. There's that entrepreneurship that gets you there. But when you talk about entrepreneurship, now is where you're already in that business and you now need to inculcate the same entrepreneurship spirit that brought you to that place to the people that work for you, without which the things, the dream that you had about that business, they start being affected just because the people that you have now brought in are no longer thinking like you. They're not no longer taking the risks that you took. Okay. So that's why I want to talk about that. Then I want to talk about customer obsession. So the the businesses that I've studied, not just the ones I've shown there, the others that have grown over the years, there was one thing that was very clear, that they at some point they became obsessed with their customers. That obsession is not the kind that you lose focus of why you built that business, but it's a kind that understands who pays you. They keep the word is always that the customer is king, but when you listen to entrepreneurs and those who have built businesses, that's not their mantra. Their mantra actually is, when I talk about customer obsession, is not the customer being king. It's about you understanding their needs so well that you meet them anyway, whether or not they demand for you to meet them or not. You are so ready to meet them because you already know what they'll be asking. So one of the things that was very clear is that those businesses that sustain themselves over long period of time is that they become so obsessed with what the customer is asking for on a continuous basis. They're always asking themselves, what are our customers telling us? Again, let's use big companies like Kodak, for example, and it's used a lot in strategy conversations because they are actually an example of what not to do when you do a strategy. It's an example of continuous improvement, continuous innovation, responding to the customers. When the customer says, look, not just customers, but even your internal customers, your employees who come and tell you, look, the environment is changing. People are thinking about digital cameras. Then you continue producing films. Then it becomes a problem. Think of another on the other side. Think about Nokia, that when smartphones were becoming the big thing, they stuck to their pad, the phones that had the pad, and over time, then there are businesses that have collapsed. So let's even come back home and think about Uchumi, for example. Uchumi, which when Isaiah and I were in high school, was a big brand. We couldn't afford Uchumi. We used to go to Jack and Jill, which was near somewhere in the middle of town, and Uchumi was that expensive. Years later, about over 10 years later, that brand is totally spoiled. And it's just this conversation around customer obsession, because around the same time, a business called Nakumat came and convinced all of us that if we need it, they have got it, right? In under one roof, we would buy everything that we needed. So why should I walk into the Uchumi to buy something that I know I'll find if I walk into a Nakumat? I'll shop for every part of the house. Okay, so customer obsession is a key thing that we need to keep talking about if we are going to sustain our businesses beyond borders and beyond generations. We have to keep thinking about it. The other thing that we need to think about here is our business model. So when last year, one of the key things, especially when we were not sure how COVID was going to look like. Right now, most of the businesses have accepted that it's going to be there for a while until all of us are vaccinated and we have herd immunity. Until then, it's here to stay. So if that is the case, then how the way the business models were impacted and have changed, how should we then change our models to reflect that? And by business model, it's usually a big word that we who do strategy talk about, but it's simply how we build value for our customers that we have chosen, how we build value for our shareholders, for those of us who will have shareholders. And think about it. Just yesterday, somebody was saying that the main shareholder is actually their wife. So when I say shareholders, it's the owners of the business, the people that have invested money, who then expect returns from there, or who have a livelihood from that business. Then we need to create models that are sustainable beyond a crisis that like what we had, models that will change, that are flexible, that will change even as various as things change in the world. So COVID was here, there'll be more. Globalization was there, internet, all these changes have come, but some of these businesses that have been there for 100 years have survived just because their business model from the onset was flexible enough to allow them to change together with during the times that things have changed. Then we have disciplines of execution. So having done strategy for many organizations, and there was a complaint that I received a few days ago, that one of the problems we have specifically in Kenya, this person was talking about Kenya, is that we are very good at coming up with strategies. We are very good at developing documentation and plans. Several times I've had plans that have been, somebody has picked them from here and they've gone implemented in another country and they worked perfectly. One time somebody was giving a conversation that somebody picked we have in the 1970s, somebody, the traffic department of our police developed at how to manage traffic in Nairobi, so that then we don't have the kind of traffic jams that we have today. So obviously we didn't implement it, which is why we have traffic jams. Then the Colombians, I think it was the Colombians, yes, they came and took our plan, implemented it in their country. It worked perfectly. Which I'm not sure, unless now they have messed it up, then it worked very well. So we are very good at coming up with good plans. Excellent. Next year we will have a lot of plans around manifestos and whatnot. But the question, and this is a problem not just with small organizations, small and medium enterprises, it's a problem with even large organizations around execution. Why don't we execute some of these plans? Whose problem is it? Is it a problem with the people we have in our organizations? Is it a problem with the plans themselves, that we didn't do very well, such a good job coming up with the plans? Or what is the problem exactly? And so I'll talk about disciplines of execution. It's actually some very interesting disciplines that come from a book with the same name. So actually you can go and study the book, but I'll share some of the ideas that come from that book and what we have learned and used in some of the conversations around strategy. So then after that, I'll take questions. So I am cognizant of the fact that I might not be able to finish everything today. So hopefully, God allowing, we'll get another chance to go through. But I'll try and at least cover one section. When I was reviewing this material, I realized it was too much for even an hour. So it's okay. I think I'll just make it. I won't go fast because I don't want also to deny us the opportunity of just soaking into what I'll be talking about. So let's talk about entrepreneurship for a minute. And I want you to think about these men. These are men, two of them are in Africa. All of us know Steve Jobs. We know James Mwangi of Equity. We know Aliko Dangote of the Dangote Empire. And they have built some very successful businesses when you think about it. Apple, was it last year or the year before, was had a valuation of about $1 billion. It was 1 trillion, sorry. And And when you think about equity and the way they have given the big banks a run for their money, so today the conversation is between in just about this started in 94, so we're in 2002, in about just about almost 20 something years. The business is competing with KCB that has been there for years before this business. So what was this? Was it that has sustained these businesses? What has changed? Um, what when you look at Apple, on the other hand, you have a business that was started actually like most of the businesses in the US, that as you listen to the backstory of most of these businesses, what I've heard is young people who started these businesses in their dorm rooms in campus, in their garages at home. And this is a similar business. Dangote, and they have become empires over time. So these are businesses that started locally in their places, but have grown then to beyond borders. They are now being moved to, some of them, to the next generation. If you read about Dangote, you'll start seeing the children are now starting to run some of the businesses there. And and so the question is, what how have they managed to build these businesses? What was the and what was the secret, so to speak, in coming up with these businesses? So, and I don't think there's any secret. It's just business practices that they adopted that were helpful. I don't know how many of us have studied the equity case study, because it's been well studied, even not just in Kenya, but even I think I saw Stanford also have it as one of their case studies in their business school. One of the things that back in just before 1994, it was actually going insolvent. It was a microfinance institution, and they were lending, but they had such bad loans, and it was actually insolvent at that point. And even James Mwangi wasn't there from the start. He was brought in around that time, and he transformed. But when you listen and you read about the things he did to transform that business, they're actually the basic things that all of us should be doing in our business if we want to establish and to sustain our businesses beyond. Again, I'll keep referring to beyond borders and beyond generations, because this is a business then that, most of us, if we'll have somebody that who works there, somebody who has built their career there. So what did they do? These are actually entrepreneurs that exhibited the following. First, they were very quick around spotting opportunities, which is a very, very major thing I see in most entrepreneurs that I have spoken to. They are risk takers. They were very ready to take risks, even when other people were not, that they were not bothering, or not bothering, but rather they couldn't see how that some of those risks would change over time. But they were also innovative people. When you think about it, these are people who are able to innovate, not just for the moment of when they are starting the business, but they were able to innovate beyond that. Because when you think about uh, think about the equity you knew of, let's say 15, 10 years ago, which is, yeah, about 10 years ago, versus the one that you know now, and the kind of investments they're even making around innovations right now. They're talking about when you listen to them, especially during the investor briefing, they will talk about how they want to have 100 million customers. Okay, and this is a business that was in our rural homes, trying to get the farmers into to sign up with them. These are businesses that are now in places like Congo, South Sudan, and whatever, and all those places. But it's just about innovation. So let me ask, especially the business people in this conversation, how innovative are we still beyond that fast innovation that got you to where you are? How innovative are you in changing the way you do your business? I read a story, and this is why I'm so passionate about SMEs. I read a story the other day of somebody who started a chapati business, and the reason it's a good story is the milestones that they made up to where they are, to the point where today all their all their they not only are a business, but they actually going beyond, the way you move away from Nairobi and you start supplying to people outside Nairobi. And it was a very simple model, but it's working. And when I studied it, the tenets of business that were used in that conversation, are exactly the same ones that we teach, we train in big businesses. Okay, so innovation is not about IT. I see most businesses thinking of innovation about IT, but how we innovating in the products, how we innovating the processes and of how we meet customer needs, how we innovating in terms of how we how we manage our employees. Those are all innovative things that then can be infused in businesses. They are very specific. It make around value creation, okay, around the products, around the mindset that they have within, not just for themselves, but even within the people that they work with. That's the entrepreneurs. And then they are creative, of course, goes together with innovativeness and sound management. So the thing I have found, especially the last 2 years working with SMEs, has been um, we demand a lot of accountability from the institutions that we work with. Think about the way we always, and it's the right thing to do, demand about accountability and transparency from government. But I find that our businesses, sometimes we exempt them from the sound management that is required for us to build the right foundation for our businesses. I find that when we start demanding for accountability and transparency in businesses, then you see people getting hesitant. But how are we going to build an enduring businesses if we don't if we don't build the correct foundation, the correct uh, uh, DNA, if I may call it so, that allows us to build to continue to move these businesses from our generation to the next one. And then the customer, and I'll talk about the customer at some point, being a key, something that a key area that we obsess with, and I'll talk about founders mentality in a minute. So then there's the question that is always asked: are entrepreneurs born or made? Okay, are they born or made? And every time I have this conversation with business people, it's a combination of some of us are made during hard times or during even basically being upbringing. Others are born because of maybe their personality, and they just are go-getters, and they'll go and they'll exhibit all the other factors, and that will drive them to start businesses. But there is the ability to foresee potential. I do recall one time I was given a story about um, a guy who was sent, and it's a story that goes around a lot. A guy who was sent to a village and asked, so just go to that village and confirm whether there's market for shoes. So he went to this village and found that people don't wear shoes. And so he came back and told the boss, look, they have no idea about shoes. There's no market. We will not be able to sell anything. They have never worn shoes, and therefore they can't buy shoes. The guy decided, okay, maybe let's see whether there's a different opinion from this other guy. So he sent a different guy who went to the same village, looked and said, okay, yeah, for sure, those guys don't wear shoes. But he told the boss, look, they don't wear shoes, but that's the best thing. That means we have 100% market share. If we go with our shoes, we have 100% market share. And I think that's the way I've having talked to several entrepreneurs. It's that's the way they see those gaps as opportunities for them, as potential for them to sell whatever it is that they have. So if this is the case, then one of the things that drives entrepreneurs is first their ethos. Ethos is the ethics around what they believe in themselves. So um, where they say the mission first, if you think about the US Army or even the armies, and you read about them, is that they never accept defeat and they never quit. I have listened just to the entrepreneurs and the number of times they fall and they keep rising. Every time they fall, keep rising, and they always keep their goals at hand to remind them of why they started what they did start. Then their makeup is things like personality. What if you observe some of the people that I've shared with, the entrepreneurs, is when you look at their personality, and it also helps in when you can sell, for example. It helps when you can, because selling is about talking to people. I'm not saying the people who can't, sell do not have businesses. I'm just saying that, it works to the people's advantage. The attitude, awareness about customer focus, application of creativity and imagination is something that then comes in handy. The skills, the ability to network, think strategically, and gain access. And then the motivation, when I've talked to and also read about various entrepreneurs, they have interesting motivation about why they started the businesses. When you think about Steve Jobs and the way he talks about how he didn't go to college, and why he thought college was not going to help him, you just listen and you'll actually pick the motivation around his entrepreneurship journey. Think even locally, just as you listen to people talk about their businesses, you actually get the motivation. Some of them was, I just realized I can't work and I needed something to provide, so got creative about how to make money to provide for a family. And what then, these things then drives them to find resources to manage their risk, and then therefore create value for themselves. So as we think about this, I want to just play a quick video. I'm hoping that it will play, but even if it doesn't play the way I hope it does, I will be able to explain at least. So just give me a second. Um, give me. So I know it's playing. Just give me a second. So let me know, Isaiah, can you hear me? Can you hear the video?
Not yet.
And now?
I hear some sound on the, but it's not clear.
It's not clear. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a problem with, I could hear the same thing earlier. So I think it's a problem with how Zoom is speaking the video. So it's okay, I'll explain. So I want to share something around something called founders mentality. Founders mentality was coined by two actually they're also consultants, and they started businesses, several businesses, and the aim of starting these businesses was to understand what drives big businesses and the growth of those businesses. And what that video was going to show is just the journey of how a business moves from, when we are starting up as a business, we are very small, we don't have complicated processes. We are able to move things faster, in terms of responding to the customer. But at some point, the business becomes complicated. And by complicated, I mean we start then being um, introducing processes. We introduce more employees into our businesses. We introduce a lot of documents that are supposed to be filled in the business. So what they discovered is that there's, over time, when a business becomes bureaucratic, then that's where the decline starts. But what leads to the decline during that stage is actually the lack of a founder's mentality. So think about and I believe I have a few entrepreneurs in the call. Think about when you started the business. It was very simple, and you knew what you wanted to do. So let me first talk about founders mentality, and then I'll share the application to it. So a founders mentality is is uh, is building some behavior that are going to be embedded within not just the founder of the organization, but within the employees that come to work in that business. But if you don't define what that mentality that you want them, people who work for you or the people that you network with, then it becomes hard, which hence founders mentality. So what does founders mentality mean? It means that we have an owner's mindset. So the thing about those businesses that I mentioned is that the people who drove them, and some of the businesses are no longer run by the owners anymore, but the people who run them have an owner's mindset. So an owner has the following: one, they have an aversion to bureaucracy. Okay, so it's not that they don't become. In fact, bureaucracy is good, but there's a point when bureaucracy becomes a big problem and impediment to growth for businesses. So An aversion to bureaucracy means that in as much as we'll adopt processes, okay, it doesn't mean that we stop being innovative. So an owner, when you think about the businesses, they actually avoid a case where then they stop being innovative. Then they have a bias for action, right? They wake up and the customers are telling them do this, and they will immediately effect that. They have a strong cash focus. They realize, the owner realizes that without cash in this business, we will not be able to grow in any way. And that was one problem that we saw last year with most of the businesses that we talked to. That was a realization that we had lost focus on how to run a business and ensure that we have enough cash to run the operations. Then they have a frontline obsession. Frontline obsession means that, one, we are always relentless about experimenting. Why are we experimenting? To make sure that the businesses that we are experimenting to get the best for the people um, that we serve. Frontline empowerment is that the people who are the frontline serving our customers are empowered to make the decision that serves that customer. And customer advocacy means that the customer is always sure that as a business, I will speak on their behalf. Then insurgency is that we have a bold mission. When I think about the businesses I've talked to and the businesses that I see, it's a people who went out of their way to just, they saw no limitations in what they could achieve as a business. So the question I have usually is, do we still have, this is a founder's mentality. When a founder is starting, these things are usually there. But over time, they fade away and we start having a bureaucracy that then no longer serves the customer. So thinking about beyond borders and beyond uh, generations, one of the things, and we need to move from one generation to the next. As you build your business and it grows from one level to the next, is actually to inculcate a founder's mentality on an ongoing basis. The people we employ, the people we hire, that we are continuously just moving this mentality to them so that they run the business as if it's their own. And a few questions I have here, then I'll finish because I've seen time has just disappeared on me. Um, is let's assess how our founders' mentality in our businesses is like. Are we clear about the big why? And this question will always come up whenever we do strategy, because people uh, will buy whatever we are providing when they understand why you sell them in the first place. Okay. It doesn't mean they will buy if they don't, but most of the time the businesses that have grown and expanded, they buy because of the why. Okay. And once we understand, as our businesses, once we understand why we started the business, and even as you listen to most organizations, including churches, uh, the core conversation starts with why. Why are we set up as a church, for example? And that is what draws the people to them. Okay, draws the congregations to the congregation to the church, because they now understand why the church exists. So same thing with businesses. We need to be clear about why these businesses exist. And this has been is a very interesting conversation. And if you're able to listen to a guy called Simon Sinek, he's the one who he talks a lot about the golden circle, where he talks about the why. And one example he gives is that even when you think about people like Martin Luther King Jr., the reason they are remembered is because they actually sold a why. Okay, they sold a why. He said, "I have a dream." That's the why. That's it. And people followed whatever he was talking about. Then we ask ourselves, do you find the mission to be personally energizing and inspiring to those around you? As a business, is your own mission and the mission of your business inspiring to those around you? Are we clear on the capabilities that drive differentiation with our customers? And then, are we focused in the long term in our investment and budgetary decisions? Okay. These are some of the questions we can ask and see whether they make sense to us as founders or as business owners. If some of these things are not there, then it's something to consider just introducing or revitalizing in your business, so that then, even as you try to grow your business, then you have the right ingredients, so to speak, for it to thrive beyond where it is now. Then, do you embrace turbulence, experiment, and build new business models? And businesses were forced a lot last year to do this. Then do we innovate and experiment a lot in the field, or are we stuck in certain areas? Do we have an efficient feedback process to help us understand what's working in our businesses? Okay, are we the most sought after employer by top talent? Sometimes, especially when businesses grow, then you start competing with other people for the same people, for the same employees. So have we built our business in such a way that we attract the people that we really need and the people that are going to make a difference in our businesses? And then do we treat the frontline heroes of the business? Do we treat our frontline as heroes of the business, the people that we send out there to deal with our customers? I'm always surprised when certain businesses ignore or treat really badly the people who meet the customers. So how do you expect your customer to be happy when the people serving them are also unhappy? And the saying in business is that people will buy from people they like. So if you come to me and I don't like you, really chances of buying from you are very low. But how will I like you when yourself you don't like what you do, you don't like what you're selling to me? Chances of me buying from you are very slim. So do we treat them as frontline? Okay. Then are we clear about our core customers and the loyal, and is there a loyalty to the competitive advantage? Again, this goes back to the business model that we'll talk about maybe next time. Is around, are we clear about what value we bring to the customers as a business? Because that is what those entrepreneurs were thinking about. Is a voice of customer represented in our organization? When you talk about in the businesses that we own or we are running, when you talk about our customers, do we have somebody speaking and saying, no, 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 this thing, the customers are no longer thinking about this, they're actually thinking about something else? And then have we simplified our initiatives to focus on the biggest priorities that deliver value? And do we act upon decisions faster than competitors? Are people quick to take on personal responsibility and risk doing the right thing in our businesses? Right? Because that's what founders mentality, that when you have founders, and when we I've talked to people who have started businesses in various sectors. So I have somebody who started a college, and when you listen, I listened to them. Another person was talking about how they started a business about and it's now growing from the updates I see. They sell hair products. The reason I'm talking about hair is not because I don't have any, but they talk about hair products, and and just listening to them and the journey that they took to get to where they are. It's around also ensuring that the people that they talk that they bring into the business take responsibility and are focused on doing the right thing for the business and for the customers. And then we have a sharp focus on cash and cost. Again, this was very alive. I learned personal lessons just talking to businesses last year around how they lost sight of the fact that a business is actually run by cash. You need cash to make cash, right? So and many people learned the hard way that time. And the focus doesn't mean you keep cash and you don't reinvest in the business. It just means that you know where your cash is coming from and when, and you know where it's going and when, because that helps you then ensure that your business is always cash flow positive, at least to the extent that you meet your obligations. And then do we deploy people and capital where they are most critical to the business? Again, when I've trained and done strategy assignments, one of the things that I've always highlighted to the businesses is that strategy is as much as about deciding what to do as it is about deciding what not to do. And the reason is because we don't have unlimited resources, we have limited resources, and therefore they have to be pointed. Okay. One of the complaints I remember hearing about small businesses in Kenya is when we have small businesses we build and they become successful, then midway at about year 7 8 thereabout, when a business is already cash flow positive, they're profitable, then somebody the owners of the business start removing cash from that business and building another business. Now businesses have grown by doing that, but what I found is the person who was complaining was actually complaining in light of the fact that this when they started removing money from that business, the original business started struggling heavily, such that the success that they were having was no longer felt by the people they were serving. So there needs to be then some planned way of how we are reinvesting our money and in what areas, which is why we start with number one up there. Are we clear about our why, so that even when we reinvest in other businesses, then it's linked to a bigger purpose that we are doing. So I'll stop there, Isaiah, and just because I've run out of time, and also because it's because I can't. I think it will be unfair for me to continue past 9. So I will take any questions, and then we can stop. I'll stop when you tell me to stop in terms of responding to any question. But in terms of presentation, let me just stop there, because I also know that was also a heavy session. I've talked too much. And then maybe when I get another opportunity, I can do the rest. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Titus. That was well delivered. That is very insightful and very